what do you do in the first 5 days, right? That's the question. By the way, I have to tell you a story. I saw the number of people about the Khan Academy. How many of you know about it? It's with everybody in the room. Then I saw the number of hands that were raised that you actually use it, which went to 0 just about, right? Everybody saw that? So I'm going to tell you a story. So I kind of like Khan Academy, especially for mathematics, things that are rote. That allows a teacher to free up and do really interesting things, like how to apply mathematics, right? So you offload the rote stuff of memorization and equations and taking derivatives and whatever that is, just offload that. And that really frees the teacher up. Because one of the really important questions is, in the age where you can access knowledge in almost any form on the internet, what is the added value of a teacher? Really? That's a really hard question today. What is your added value? Because if I walk into your classroom and I watch you teach, and then I can show the kids how they can learn the same thing online, you have to ask, what's my added value? And I'm worried that some of you don't know that there are all these resources. So the math one, Khan Academy. So I said, is anybody in the room using Khan Academy? And they were all math teachers. One math teacher raised his hand. I said, how are you using it? And he says, oh, I'm using that with my daughter at home. My daughter. She's Khan, she's going way ahead, and it's really amazing. You're absolutely right. And I said, so you know it works with your daughter. How about in class? He says, no, I'll never use it in class. Do you want to take a guess why he will never use it in class? Take a guess about why he said he would never use it in class. He said, 1-to-1, Khan Academy's fine. Because there's no boundary and kids can keep learning. Yeah, right? Some of you are a little too slow on that. And so I said, can you just explain? And he said, yeah, I have to make sure that every student is doing the same set of problems at the same time. That's how I teach math. They all take the same test on the same day. They all do the same homework on the same day. Khan Academy would disrupt all of that. I'll have some kids 6 months ahead. I can't have that. So we have to, and I said, you're in the business to figure out how to stop learning? Is that what you're telling me? And yeah, well, I watch a lot of schools. I have to tell you, that's still the norm. I tell you. So, the biggest problem of all is letting go of control. If I could teach teachers one skill that would free up the use of technology, which is unlimited, I am not going to teach you a piece of technology. I'm not going to do that. Because you might not be ready for the freedom that comes with that. So this is really about shifting control. It is not about technology. I have learned this over and over again in the last 30 years of trying to do this. So I hope you can laugh. Okay, back to the first 5 days. We're ready now? Okay, story time is over. Now I'm going to do a presentation. So what would you do on the first 5 days? Oh, by the way, there's a hashtag that we have developed. Just want to tell you. It's called the first 5 days. And so if you know about Twitter, do you know about Twitter? The 500 million, or any of you here? It's you know what's interesting? I'm glad you're laughing at all the right places, which is good. I go to schools, and you'd be amazed at how many schools do not allow Twitter. You'd be stunned. So, and all those other things, Pinterest and the rest of it. And the irony of all of that is the most powerful tools for learning are now blocked in many schools. We have almost become the learning police. From that math teacher to superintendents who don't know how to talk to their network manager, goes on and on and on. We have really become the learning police. When history is written about this time, and people look back 50 years from now, and look at school policy around the most powerful, this is like blocking books when the printing press is invented, which is exactly what schools did. It is exactly what they did. They wouldn't let anyone have the printing press. You know the story? Martin Luther freaked them out and the rest. Okay. No, that's a true story. This guy named Martin Luther. Okay. All right, so what's really interesting is there's a lot more knowledge in this room about what great ideas on the first 5 days than I can ever share. Not possible. But I had to figure out how to connect the room. The room needs to know what the room knows. I don't think the room knows what the room knows. That's often true in school. You have teachers who don't know what teachers know, even with professional learning networks. And so it's a constant. So for those of you who are in Twitter, first 5 days, hashtag. Okay, you can start sharing. Teachers are sharing all over the world. Now, the old stuff, I think, still holds. You know, it's about relationships, isn't it? And I'm convinced that the quality of the relationship, trust, it's really about trust. You know, the one quality that, if you took that away from a classroom, you took trust away, that's a hard year if there's no trust. So whatever you do in the first 5 days has to build trust. That's what I should have put up there, about relationships and community. That adds up to trust. And then, I'm going to say the weirdest things. I don't think a lot of kids know how to learn. I think they know how to be taught. And knowing how to be taught is very different than learning how to learn, especially with today's tools. By the way, that was explained to me by a kid at a school. I said, "What's school about?" And this 16-year-old said, "Oh, well, if the teacher doesn't know it, chances are you're not going to learn it all year." We learn what the teacher already knows. And we only learn it in the way the teacher teaches, whatever way that is. And she said, what school is about is sit down, learn how to be taught. And she wasn't saying this in a nice way. I'm saying it in a nicer way. So I'm convinced that a lot of kids do not know how to learn with these new tools. And then at some point, you have to ask, do teachers know how to learn? Because in the old model, before the technology, I think in the first 5 days, you would really be sharing your knowledge. That'd be some part of the first 5 days. Sharing knowledge. I used to teach history. I used to tell great stories. Well, I thought they were great. I think the mark of a really good teacher in the digital age is to demonstrate how they learn, not what they already know. Chances are what you already know is available. I can find it. But how you learn, I can't find. That would be an interesting thing to demonstrate on the first day of school. How does a teacher learn? And I'll talk about that more in my longer workshop. Let's see. All right. So, do your students know how to use Google? I ask this question wherever I go. Every kid I've ever met tells me they know how to use Google. Every single kid. I have found one. And he has a web design company. He was not taught at school. Now, I hope I'm wrong about your students. I don't know most of you, and I want to be wrong. I want to be absolutely wrong that your students actually do know how to use Google. But just to give you a sense, I used to teach American history, as I said, and almost every teacher agrees in the first 5 days, you have to learn as much about your students as you can. That's part of trust, both ways. So I think if I go back to teach American history, I'm going to ask my students, on the first day, I'd like you to find an image that you think is the most important image about American history. I want to know what they think before I even start teaching. I want to know what they think. And I want to see it in terms of images, because I think that's relatively easy until I started to do it. And I would ask students, are any of you on the web now? If you're on, go ahead and do this. I'd like you to find images that you think are the most important image representing American history. Now, I did it this morning, and these are the first 3 images that came up. It's a movie, right? Here, you know what? Maybe I'll jump out of this. For those of you who don't believe me, And very often people don't believe what I'm saying. So it's better to show. It's much better. And PowerPoint drives me crazy anyway. So let's see. We're in Google. And so what kids will do, I'll say, give me images on American history. So they type in American history, right? And they do that. And when the web's working, it's not working anymore. So they get this, and then they click on images, right? This is exactly what they do. They click on images, and when you get past the ones at the top, that's what you get. Well, as an American history teacher, I just got to tell you, that image was not the first thing on my mind. That wasn't it. That just wasn't it. But that's what you get in Google right now. So one of the things, and I've learned this the hard way too, I am convinced that Google is the #1 source for kids doing schoolwork. I believe all those billions of education searches. I believe that. Absolutely believe that. So I'm looking at this, and I'm watching kids do it, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. What if you taught them how to use Google? What if I typed in site:/edu and then did the search in what I believe is a more proper way, site:/edu in American history, and if it's working, it will come up. You get completely different images, more of what I was thinking. Instead of the movie, site:/edu. That means that Google is limiting your results only to higher education websites, not commercial. Site:/edu. It's just a trick. But what if you didn't know the index in the back of a book? What if you didn't know table of contents? What if you thought you know how to use Google and you really don't? And you don't know, you don't know. You don't know, you don't know. And a teacher starts the first day of school without teaching kids to use Google well. What if that were to happen? What if the #1 source of students doing homework and studying in this country is Google? And what if the majority of teachers do not teach kids how to use Google within the context of their subject in the first day of school? That would lead to a disaster all year. All year. Kids would get terrible information, and they wouldn't even know they don't know. And I think that's happening. I think we have teachers in this country who are teaching various subjects, English literature, mathematics, physics, art, music, chemistry, but they're not teaching their students to find the best information they can possibly find within that subject. If I'm right, we have to fix that right away. Shall I do another one? See, now we're not laughing. And I'm afraid we're not laughing because what I just said is probably more true than false. We are not teaching children critical thinking on the internet embedded within subjects that we teach. If you don't do anything else in technology, just do that. It's the single most logical thing to do. Because the real revolution is not technology, it's information. It's not technology. All right, so I'm just going to go on with a couple more first 5-day things. I'll go into detail on that in my workshop later. I'll pop back to the PowerPoint thing and look like I'm organized. Okay, so there is stuff, edu. By the way, if you don't like edu, you could just change edu to gov. And then you'd have only government sites. And then as you look at them, you see the Smithsonian might be si.edu, so you could teach them si.edu. You could teach them that Google has operators that are magic words that give you more precision when you find information. And if you don't know the operators, you don't know how to use Google. You should watch kids go, whoa, what's your next trick? Right? Okay. So, any questions so far? Good. I have terrible wait time. That's about as good as I get. Go on to Twitter and ask a question, okay? Actually, I'm going to go back forward one to go back to this. That content is a tutorial designed by a 12-year-old. I'll show you later. But what really interests me about that tutorial is this morning, I was up pretty early, and I decided to go onto the cluster map that's on that website to see who had logged on this morning. This morning. Do you see that? A couple in India, Australia, the Netherlands, India, Arab Emirates, Great Britain, Arab Emirates. And if I go up, you're missing a chunk. It's more countries, more countries. Now, on the first day of school, Common Core, you have to present your work to multiple audiences. See, before Common Core, your audience is simple. You have an audience of one person. We call that the teacher. Your audience is one. But now you have the world. So you have to figure out, when you want to motivate kids, what's more motivating, an audience of one or the whole world? Think about Facebook and who uses that. Think about Twitter, think about Pinterest, think about audience development. So imagine on the first day of class, you walk into my class, and I put this up, and I say, those people have hit my website already. My website is now your website. We're going to be publishing this year. Everyone in this room is going to be publishing tutorials in mathematics. And we're going to share that with the world. And if we do a good job with the design of our tutorials, which is another Common Core, you have to express yourself in different media. But this is all Common Core. You should watch kids' eyes light up. I'm going to publish for the whole world. Now, some kids get scared because they're not used to the boundaries being pushed out to the whole world. Most of our boundaries of audience, as I said, are so limited. It's one person. That can't survive either. That has to change. Because when you're with kids in a classroom, face to face, what is the most important thing you can possibly do? Share your knowledge has been the traditional thing we've done. I don't think that's the most important thing anymore. Now I think the most important thing is to teach kids to share their knowledge with the world. Not the teacher's knowledge with the class knowledge with the world, and you set that up on the first day. That raises expectations. You're here to publish to the world. I'm going to help you. I think that's more powerful than going to an interactive board and writing an equation in mathematics. And you show kids the work of other kids. Because when you will, on the face of it, I'm a big fan. There's at least somebody here from, how many people are from Australia in this room? New Zealand, Australia, 1, 2, that's it? 2 of you? We got to get more Aussies here. John Hattie, do you know John Hattie? Do you know John Hattie? John Hattie? Okay, the rest of you, John Hattie? John Hattie did the meta-analysis of the research of research in education. The research of research. Fascinating guy, John Hattie. And University of Melbourne today, comes from New Zealand, but really interesting guy. And it turns out that in the research, I don't know if you believe me or not, kids are social learners. They like talking to other children. As a natural behavior, kids want to be accepted by other children. Do you believe that? They're social. Who doesn't believe that in this room? Who doesn't understand that Socrates was right? That having a conversation with one another is a really important part of learning. It's the conversation, not the being taught how to be taught. The conversation between children is one of the most important things to improve learning, is to improve the conversation. In a lot of classrooms, there aren't any conversations. There's not one here. I've cut you off. But keep paying attention. Don't start talking to each other. Now, when I show kids, in fact, I did this in Brisbane. I was in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, right, because you were in the room at the time. I was in Brisbane, and I went off to a school about 2 miles away from this conference, and I showed some kids this tutorial. In fact, if I'm lucky, maybe I'll show it to you. How much time do I have? It's just a little 12-year-old girl, and she's explaining how to factor one number. And she does it in her cute little way that I can't do. It's about prime factoring. Every math, you have to get prime factoring right. If you don't know how to factor in a math class, you're in trouble for a whole bunch of other things. You're not going to get to calculus if you don't know how to factor. Turns out a lot of kids don't know how to factor. So just to give you a sense of this, I don't have an audio plug, but maybe I'll put this down a little bit. Well, this is the tutorial.
Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm going to show you how to do prime factoring.
Oh, there's 2 of them running at once.
So what we're going to do is one in itself.
Can you hear this?
32 is composite, meaning that it is divisible by more than the numbers 2 in itself.
Okay.
So
I'm going to stop this for a second.
Now,
She goes on to explain. 12-year-old voice explaining prime factoring. And this is the only teacher I know in math who has every single problem published by children that covers the entire curriculum. Now, if you pay attention to the research, and this happened to me in Brisbane, I ask children, I have children watch these, and I say, what do you think? And a lot of kids say, I want to learn that way. That's how I want to learn. And I'll say, why do you want to learn this way? And I've turned the sound off so it doesn't get in the way. But kids will say, sometimes my teacher thinks that you're supposed to understand it the first time. And my teacher doesn't have a rewind button. That has a rewind button. If I don't understand it, I can go back over and listen to it again and again. And not only that, but there's a library of these. They're in different voices with different designs because kids try to improve on the prior. There's a whole library. And then I asked the people who produced it, the 12-year-old girl, I have a podcast with her on my website. So I said, how long did that take you to do? And she said, 3 hours. And I said, it's only 3 minutes. She said, yeah, well, I had to play with color. And there's music. And there's, she sent it to a friend and got feedback. And then she realized she had to do it again. You're going to see another version pops up here. She does it in another color. And she says, then she realizes because she used a prime number 2 times 16 in the first set of factors, all of her friends used a prime number. So she did it again without using a prime number as the first factor, 8 by 4. The math people understood what I just said, right? And so I think we should start off every first day of school by showing children the work other children have already produced in that class. That will help them learn essentially everything that's rote that you have to learn. I think every teacher should value children as producers of content that add value to the world. We have underestimated what kids will do. So back to the story of interviewing this girl, and I said, 3 hours? Really? Why would you do 3 hours? And she said, well, homework, it's an option instead of doing homework. Homework would be 10 problems. This is 1 problem. To do the 10 problems would take me 7 minutes. To do the 1 problem takes me 3 hours. I said, it doesn't make any sense to me. She said, yeah, well, when you do homework, the teacher already knows the answer, so I'm not helping him. What? It's like, what? Really? Your teacher knows the answer? Like, I'm going, duh. And she says, no. When you do homework, that's not adding any value. When I design a tutorial that's helping my friends, that has purpose. She didn't say purpose, but she meant Dan Pink purpose. She meant purpose. So the third thing we're going to do on the first day is give children purpose. Not a grade that has no purpose for some children. Did you know? Grading is not the best motivator in the world. It isn't. The one system we rely on more than any other actually turns out to be counterproductive, which we'll talk about later if you want to. Purpose. And then she says, besides, if you have to teach something, then you really have to learn it. And I never had to learn it to do my homework, because that's just from my teacher. Do you believe this conversation? She just about undoes the basic model of control that we all have been relying on. I don't have purpose, I'm not contributing, and I'm not working with my friends to see how well they're doing with this. I think it's a fascinating time to be alive. I think it's an amazing time. But the problem is not technology. The problem is a shift of control. And in the first 5 days of school, I think we have an amazing, that's just day one. I think we have an amazing opportunity to redo it in the first 5 days. So I hope to debate this with you more during the session. Thanks for letting me hang with you guys. All good.